Whether in charge as a dive master or instructor or assisting another leader, conducting safe, enjoyable dives is a basic goal and primary activity of NAUI members. In the glossary of the NAUI Standards and Policies Manual, overseeing is defined as the overall control, intermittent supervision, evaluation, and direction of instruction, student skill performance, and diving activities by a NAUI instructor of a class or group of students. The instructor must be present at the training site, prepared to direct and render appropriate in-water assistance in aid of a student. This in contrast to the definition of direct supervision, which is supervision by the NAUI instructor of the class or group of students from a distance, allowing immediate intervention on behalf of the student. It is the level of supervision required while evaluating student performance of skills required for certification. Accepting NAUI leadership responsibility means that one fully commits to responding to divers' needs and helping ensure their safe enjoyment of diving. Global awareness, the term used to describe the absolute concentration NAUI members use to support that commitment, is a combination of experience, judgment, and knowledge. Tasks and topics to address prior to boat departure include boat rules and procedures and boat movement schedule, including departure from dock, arrival at site, last dive entry, departure from site, and arrival at dock. The diving leader aboard may also be responsible for the appropriate stowage and security of all diving equipment. Diving leaders should also review the day's plan as well as alternate plans and emergency boating and diving procedures with the captain and crew. Effective leadership of diving activities begins with the ability to communicate with divers above and below the water. Whether by distributing handouts of procedures or checklists in advance, making hand signals, writing on an underwater slate, or using a megaphone, horn, or whistle on the surface, leaders depend on their ability to transmit messages and instructions to divers. In practice, all activities benefit from a member of the dive staff getting into the water to assess actual conditions at the site. In addition to standard underwater hand signals used by buddy teams, specialized leadership hand signals are useful for directing groups of divers. Some common ones are, "Get with your buddy," "Where is your buddy?" "Follow me," "Ascend a little," "Inflate your BC," "Deflate your BC," "Get neutrally buoyant, level off," "Exhale," "Look," "Look close," "Look distant," "Don't touch or take," "Relax," "Take it easy," "Slow down," "Hold it," "Wait here" or "Wait there," "Attention," "Aquatic life," "Fish," "Eelgrass," etc. "Check air supply," "Time and depth," "Recall," "Return to beach or boat." Conducting a good dive briefing is an acquired artful skill that improves with practice. Briefings usually take place at the dive site before participants don exposure suits and gear so that they are relaxed and comfortable. Avoid positions that place the sun or other strong light sources directly in front of the group, because that too will distract the group's attention and make eye contact difficult. Each briefing is like a mini lesson review, using a briefing outline with written notes. Rehearsing until thoroughly comfortable beforehand is highly recommended. All briefings have elements in common. These are introductions, self, any assistants, and professional medical personnel present. Area and environmental orientation. Facilities, restrictions, terrain, depths, water movement, aquatic life, hazards, navigational features, alternate exit points, and diving conditions. Activity schedule, general schedule of activities, for example, entry times, dive duration, depth limits, any planned events, maximum return time, time between dives, departure time, etc. Performance requirements for training dives, instructions, dive preparation, pre-dive checks, entry and exit techniques, diving activities, skills, ascent procedures, buddy system procedures, post-dive procedures, limits on gas supply, depth or time, touring procedures and precautions, safety, conservation, and preservation. Communications, signals as needed, such as hand, recall, whistle, light, emergency, etc. Emergency procedures, chain of command, location of emergency equipment, and access to emergency services. Questions and answers. Leaders customarily check divers' equipment for completeness, placement, and basic serviceability, but the responsibility for ensuring that gear is adjusted, serviced, and functioning properly lies with the individual diver. Divers should again be asked to inspect their own and their buddies' equipment at the dive site after donning their gear. Remind divers to familiarize themselves with the placement and function of each other's alternate air source, ballast system or weight belt release, and BC inflator. Prior to divers entering the water, the activity leader or dive master should also briefly check each diver for a few critical items, such as having a completely opened cylinder valve on a full cylinder, a functioning, connected BC inflator, a properly donned weight belt or ballast system, and no loose or dangling gear. Appropriate water entry and exit techniques should be covered in the pre-dive briefing. Suited buddy pairs, generally without fins on, make their way to the entry point, put on their fins, do a final gear adjustment, and then are directed to make a stride or other entry. On some boats, divers may be required to make a back roll or other water proximity entry, or even don and remove all gear while floating at the surface. Upon returning, divers stabilize at the steps or ladder and use the submerged rungs as anchor points from which to hand aboard gear to an assistant or dive master. The following are recommendations for recovering lost gear. A NAUI leader's first consideration when gear is lost is determining whether any search is feasible or warranted, given the risk it can entail. No equipment is worth any injury. Dive schedules should be arranged so passengers make their deepest dives first. This time-tested practice can prevent excessively long required surface intervals between dives. NAUI's RGBM dive tables, which have a stated surface interval of at least 1 hour, do not allow for reverse dive profiles. In spite of pre-dive instructions, some divers may surface far from the vessel. Raising an arm with a clenched fist or holding one brightly colored fin overhead are commonly used in water signals to request a pickup, and such signals should be reviewed before the dive. Non-certified divers require a greater degree of observation and control than experienced divers, and can only dive under the supervision of an active status instructor or certified assistants. The only exception to this policy occurs in the NAUI scuba diver course for the navigation exercise on the second or subsequent training dives, and only after evaluating the required skills. Roll call is the most used method to ensure divers are on board, but leaders are cautioned to advise all divers that they must answer for themselves. During training, debriefings with the entire class are part of each dive. The following information is appropriate for the debriefing of a training dive: restatement of dive objectives, discussion of achievement and overall performance, recognition of good performance, identification of general problems, key points to remember, questions and answers, repetitive dive table calculations, logging of dives. Diving from shore offers a wide range of relatively inexpensive, easily accessible, and rewarding diving opportunities. The shore-based diver is able to make dives at almost any time of the day or night. For the leader directing shore diving activities, planning, preparation, and organization are essential for a positive experience. All the usual briefing considerations apply, and shore dives have some elements that need special attention. There are restrictive ordinances for shore diving activities in many coastal areas of the United States because groups of divers have been noisy, left garbage on the beach, trespassed on private property, or parked illegally in residential areas. Supervising specialty diving poses some special problems for NAUI leaders. Chief among these is that divers may participate in specialty activities without training or certification, despite strong recommendations to the contrary. Dives made to satisfy certification requirements in a specialty area should be treated like any other training dive. Night diving is probably the most common specialty activity that divers enjoy, and often without any additional training. Leaders should plan accordingly, organizing the event to accommodate the group's general level of experience. Consider all of the normal preparations for boat dives, and then do everything twice as carefully. Diving from unattended vessels offshore can be extremely hazardous, especially at night. Each diver is required to have a small marker light or chemical light stick, plus a primary and a separate backup dive light. Consider the risks involved with night diving. Carefully stress special night diving information in the briefing, such as recommending the use of a descent line. Encourage navigating back to the line for ascents to help avoid disorientation. Review light signals and procedures, including when dive lights should be turned on and off and precautions for their use. Remind divers that to be seen, hand signals must be made in front of a dive light. Encourage frequent monitoring of air pressure, depth, time, and direction, and recommend limited distance excursions during night dives to make finding the boat easier. Limited visibility is usually defined as horizontal visibility of 3 meters, 10 feet, or less underwater. The key areas to emphasize for limited visibility dives are navigation. Divers must be oriented to enable them to find their entry/exit point. Buddy contact. Proximity or even physical contact is in order to avoid separation while diving in limited visibility. If buddy lines are used, the divers should hold them, not be tied to them. Dives from a fixed location, such as an anchored boat, is feasible with a mild current. However, inexperienced or less physically fit divers should be discouraged from entering the water if the current exceeds 1/2 knot. A current speed of about 1 knot will cause a drift rate of 30 meters, 100 feet, per minute. Leaders should also remind divers to note the direction of the current at depth and on the surface, and begin their dives into any current so they may use it to their advantage at the end of the dive to return them to the entry/exit point. Divers should be told to not attempt fighting an overpowering current. If fatigued at depth, buddy teams should surface, establish buoyancy, and signal to be picked up. As the boat drifts, a crew member on the boat throws a line in the water. The divers now have a current line to help them return to the dive boat. This technique is good when there is a strong surface current, less than 1.5 knots, or when the boat's windage will push the boat through otherwise still water. A long trail line should be deployed from the boat. Divers who fall off the drift line surface immediately and catch the trail line to return to the boat. A deeper dive is a dive between the depths of 18 to 40 meters, 60 to 130 feet. NAUI has training depth limits, but there are no depth restrictions on certified divers' activities, only strong recommendations. Leaders should discourage divers from diving substantially deeper than they have been trained to dive, but generally have no authority to prevent certified individuals from diving as deeply as they choose. They may, however, refuse to participate in or lead such activities. NAUI formed a technical diver training division in 1997 to codify the practice of diver training for planned decompression diving, use of mixed breathing gases and gas switches during dives, as well as dives that exceed 40 meters, 130 feet. Leaders should remind divers that wetsuit compression at depth may cause a diver to become overweighted and will contribute to more rapid chilling due to reduced insulation. Minimum instrumentation per diver should be a timer, depth gauge, submersible pressure gauge, and compass. Instruments, particularly dive computers, should not be shared by a buddy team. Buoyancy control is critical. Leaders should encourage slow ascents, precautionary decompression stops, and careful air monitoring. Leaders should recommend that divers be equipped with redundant scuba systems, such as a pony bottle with separate regulator and pressure gauge, or appropriately equipped double cylinders. The deeper the dive, the greater the need for decompression lines and hanging extra air cylinders should depth and time limits be exceeded. Wrecks are popular dive sites, ranging from nearly indistinguishable debris on the bottom to dramatically imposing intact ships. Shallower, open wrecks are available in many areas, and ships are being purposely scuttled to form artificial reefs and dive sites. Penetration wreck diving requires special knowledge, equipment, and training.